Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a massive deep dive into one of the absolute most thrilling, heart-pounding survival stories you are ever going to encounter in your English studies. We're talking about the classic text, We're Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together, by Gordon Cook and Alan East. Now, if you're prepping for your exams, you probably already know the basic plot, but today, we're going to really break this story down into its core academic elements, all while reliving the sheer terror of being stranded in the middle of a killer ocean. Get ready for a crazy story of courage, insane endurance, and the undeniable power of family.
Okay, let's just jump right in and look at the exact words that give this story its famous title. We aren't afraid to die if we can all be together. You and Mummy, Sue, and I. Guys, these words weren't spoken by some hardened veteran sailor. They were literally spoken by a 6-year-old boy named Jonathan. I want you to hold on to that thought as we go through this, because this single sentence completely establishes the life-or-death stakes of their journey. It takes what could have been just a standard adventure story and turns it into this profound testament to the human spirit.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the grand ambition, 16 years of preparation.
So look at the sheer contrast here. On one hand, you've got this super romantic ambition. It's July 1976, and a 37-year-old businessman named Gordon Cook decides he wants to duplicate the historic round-the-world voyage of the legendary Captain James Cook. Sounds like a dream, right? But listen, this was absolutely no spontaneous, reckless vacation. For 16 grueling years, Gordon and his wife Mary spent all their free time mastering seafaring skills. They built the Wave Walker, which was this professionally crafted 23-meter, 30-ton wooden-hulled beauty, and they spent months relentlessly testing it in the absolute roughest British waters they could find. They respected the ocean, and they prepared for the absolute worst.
So who exactly is stepping onto this boat? Well, we have our narrator Gordon, his wife Mary, their 6-year-old son Jonathan, and their 7-year-old daughter Suzanne. The first leg of their trip was a totally smooth 105,000-kilometer journey down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town, but they knew what was coming next. Before heading east into the treacherous southern Indian Ocean, which by the way is known as one of the world's roughest seas, they made a super strategic decision. They hired 2 experienced crewmen, American Larry Vigil and Swiss Herb Seigler. They knew for a fact they were going to need all the muscle they could get.
Moving right along to Section 2, Disaster Strikes the Wave Walker, Entering the Storm.
This timeline is a really fantastic mental map for your exam prep, so definitely take note. They set sail in July 1976. Fast forward to December 25th, they're 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town, celebrating Christmas. Now the weather is already turning terrible, with strong gales, but they push through with holiday cheer anyway. But then, look at how insanely fast it escalates. Just a week later, on January 2nd, the real fight for their lives begins.
As dawn breaks on that January 2nd morning, the numbers alone tell the true story of their terror. 15. The waves had grown to a monstrous 15 meters high. Just to put that into perspective for a second, that is as tall as the Wave Walker's main mast. Imagine looking up from the deck of a boat. Actually, scratch that. Imagine looking up at a solid wall of water the size of a 5-story building just bearing down on you. Terrifying.
The tension finally peaks at 6 p.m. The wind suddenly drops. The sky grows super dark. There is this incredibly ominous, terrifying silence. And then a tremendous explosion smashes the vessel. A rogue wave crashes over the ship with such violent force that the captain is literally thrown overboard into the churning sea, and the solid timber beams of the hull crack wide open. Water just starts pouring endlessly into the lower cabin decks. It's absolute chaos.
Which brings us to Section 3. The battle for survival, a desperate fight.
You see, survival in this moment isn't about some romantic movie-style heroism. It's about frantic, exhausting, mechanical action. Step 1, they drop the storm jib and lash heavy mooring ropes across the stern just to slow the boat down. Step 2, the muscle kicks in. Larry and Herb start pumping water frantically. The text actually describes them working like madmen for 36 continuous hours. And Step 3, when the main hand pumps get blocked with floating debris and inevitably short-circuit, it's a random spare electric pump they find under the chart room that ultimately saves the ship from sinking to the bottom of the ocean. It's just a grueling, exhausting, totally physical battle.
Now let's slow it down a bit for Section 4, the courage of children, emotional anchors.
Because while the adults are physically fighting the ocean up top, the children are fighting this massive psychological battle down below. Remember, they are just 6 and 7 years old. 7-year-old Suzanne suffers a really severe head injury from the impact. She has a huge bump, deep cuts, and her eyes swell black.
Yet when her father comes rushing down to the cabin, she bravely refuses to complain. She literally tells him she didn't want to worry him while he was trying to save them all. I mean, wow, that is an astonishing level of maturity and courage for a 7-year-old, don't you think?
And that brings us right back to our opening quote. In their absolute darkest hour, when Gordon has cracked ribs, broken teeth, and feels utterly, completely defeated, his 6-year-old son Jonathan looks right at him and says, "We aren't afraid to die if we can all be together." The crucial takeaway here for your exams is that this pure trust and bravery from a child acts as the ultimate catalyst. It instantly shifts the injured captain's morale, giving him the mental fortitude to march right back out on deck and fight the sea with every single ounce of strength he has left.
And that determination leads us to Section 5, Reaching Safe Harbor, a pinprick in the ocean.
Gordon has to use just basic navigational tools, including a compass that hadn't even been corrected for magnetic variation, and carefully calculate the wind currents to aim for a literal pinprick in the vast Indian Ocean. They are looking for Isle Amsterdam. It's a tiny French scientific base that's just 65 kilometers wide. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. But against all odds, at 6 p.m. on January 6th, the dark outline of the island appears on the horizon. The next morning, all 28 inhabitants of that tiny island come out to cheer and welcome the survivors ashore. What a feeling of relief that must have been.
Finally, let's wrap this up with Section 6, Core Themes and Takeaways, Academic Synthesis.
When you're structuring your character analyses for a paper or a test, look at how every single person on board uniquely contributed to their survival. It's like a giant puzzle. Gordon was the leader and the brain, calculating those crazy navigational fixes and repairing the hull. Mary was the steady hand, maintaining absolute composure and holding the wheel during the most critical hours of the storm. Larry and Herb provided the relentless physical endurance, pumping water for 36 hours straight. But the children, Suzanne and John, they provided the ultimate emotional strength, enduring severe physical pain without even a hint of panic. They were truly the engine of hope for the whole crew.
If we extract the absolute core themes of the text, they boil down to these 3 main pillars. First, optimism in crisis. Gordon's positive thinking and determination allowed him to overcome seemingly impossible physical odds. Second, family solidarity. The mutual trust and unconditional love among the family members served as their ultimate unbreakable strength. And third, human endurance. The whole story proves that rigorous preparation, applied technical skill, and unyielding perseverance really can triumph over nature's most terrifying fury.
So, I want to leave you with a provocative question directly inspired by your review prompts. How exactly did Jonathan's words motivate the captain? When you write your answer, don't just talk about the boat or the water, talk about the mind. Think about how a child's unwavering faith can entirely shift an adult's perspective, from accepting defeat to fiercely fighting for the future. Ask yourself, how would you have reacted in the flooded belly of the wavewalker? Keep that thought in mind as you study this incredible text. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and good luck with your exams.